Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into this incredibly dramatic, multi-generational saga of four ancient kings. We're going to uncover some highly actionable lessons here about the success trap, the power of consistency, and crisis management, all by looking at historical records that, honestly, read a lot like a modern political thriller. Let's get right into it.
So, right out of the gate, I want to pose a profound question about leadership. What exactly separates a leader whose legacy completely crumbles in pride from one who manages to drag a nation back from the brink of absolute destruction? Ultimately, it all boils down to how we choose to respond to two extremes: unprecedented prosperity on one hand and absolute disaster on the other.
Here's our agenda for today. Number 1, Uzziah, success and pride. 2, Jotham, the power of consistency. 3, Ahaz, crisis and ruin. 4, Hezekiah, reform and restoration. And finally, number 5, Hezekiah, faith under fire.
Taking a look at this timeline, this really gives us a great chronological roadmap. We're doing a character study of a single nation as it swings wildly from absolute peak prosperity down into total collapse, and then, amazingly, to a miraculous restoration over the course of 4 generations.
Okay, starting off with Section 1, Uzziah, success and pride.
Imagine taking the throne when you're just 16 years old. Well, that was King Uzziah. And early on, he was a textbook example of a great leader. He actively sought God, leaning heavily on the guidance of a prophet named Zechariah. And as long as he sought that spiritual guidance and kept his ego in check, he experienced unprecedented success. We're talking major military innovation, huge agricultural expansion, and national strength that made him famous literally all the way to the borders of Egypt. But here is the crucial turning point. The so-called success trap was sprung the very second he started believing his own hype. You can see his internal narrative shift from "God helped me do this" to "I achieved this all by myself." Actually, leaders are often in the most danger, not when things are falling apart, but when everything is going perfectly and they start thinking they're untouchable. And that arrogant shift, it had immediate consequences. Blinded by pride, Uzziah completely ignored established boundaries. He actually marched right into the temple to burn incense, which was a sacred, highly restricted duty meant only for the priests. When 80 courageous priests stepped up to stop him, he just flew into a rage. By crossing that clear, uncrossable line, he was instantly struck with leprosy. Just like that, he lost his power and ended up dying in tragic, quarantined isolation.
Moving on to Section 2, Jotham, the power of consistency.
So now, Uzziah's son Jotham steps up, and he is handed a really complicated legacy. A thriving kingdom, sure, but completely overshadowed by his dad's disgraceful exit. The secret to Jotham's reign is actually found in the original Hebrew meaning behind his leadership style. The text says he walked the right path, which literally translates to this active, deliberate preparation of his ways before God. It wasn't just some spontaneous or passive goodness. It was a conscious, daily effort to align his core values with his actions.
Jotham is the ultimate picture of quiet, consistent strength. He brilliantly threaded the needle here. He emulated his father's great administrative strengths, but strictly avoided his fatal pride. In fact, he explicitly refused to ever wrongfully enter the temple. And because of this steady, rock-solid faith, he even managed to defeat the Ammonites, holding on to his integrity even when the people around him were still deeply corrupt.
Which brings us to Section 3, Ahaz, crisis and ruin.
Sadly, that beautiful generational consistency, it completely evaporated in the 3rd generation. King Ahaz triggered a terrifying, devastating downward spiral for the nation. He completely rejected his father's right path, threw himself into idolatry, and, horrifyingly, even sacrificed his own children. All of this absolute chaos culminated in the literal shutting of the temple doors. It was this defiant physical act that represented a total abandonment of their foundational core values.
To put the human cost of a leader lacking a moral compass into perspective, just look at this number: 120,000. That is the number of Judean soldiers killed in a single day of battle. The nation just completely fractured and fell to its enemies under Ahaz's disastrous, directionless leadership.
Ahaz really had a deeply flawed psychology. Because, rather than letting this monumental crisis drive him to a place of self-reflection or change, he just doubled down. He desperately leaned on the very worldly powers, like the Assyrians, and the foreign idols that were systematically destroying him. He literally became more unfaithful when times got tough, pretty much guaranteeing his legacy would end in total shame.
Okay, let's look at Section 4,
Hezekiah, reform and restoration. So the nation is now bankrupt, defeated, and spiritually dead. But look at Hezekiah's incredible laser focus. His very first act, in his very first month on the throne, was reopening and repairing the doors of the temple that his father had violently nailed shut. Hezekiah understood something crucial. To fix the economy and the military, he had to prioritize true values first by immediately throwing those physical doors wide open. True reform had to start from within.
Then, he does something really unexpected. He sends invitations across enemy lines, inviting the fractured northern tribes to come celebrate the Passover in Jerusalem. Now, a lot of the people who showed up were not ceremonially prepared according to the strict laws of the time. But Hezekiah prays this incredible intercessory prayer that shows us a leader prioritizing God's grace and national unity way above rigid exclusionary rules. He simply asked for pardon for anyone who had set their heart on seeking God.
The spiritual relief from this grace-led leadership was so massive that we see this fantastic number, 14. They voluntarily extended their standard 7-day festival to a full 14 days. They were experiencing this profound, unifying joy that literally hadn't been seen in Jerusalem since the golden age of King Solomon.
And the best part? This wasn't just some fleeting emotional high. This genuine restoration sparked immediate, sweeping action. Citizens voluntarily left that festival and just started dismantling the remaining idols across all their territories. They enthusiastically funded the kingdom's recovery with overflowing tithes, which meant the priests could finally return to their duties. They found true prosperity through wholehearted, joyful dedication.
Now for our final segment, Section 5, Hezekiah, Faith Under Fire. But, as we all know, a restored foundation is always going to be tested. When the overwhelming, seemingly unstoppable Assyrian army invaded and started waging this vicious psychological warfare, Hezekiah stepped up and reframed the entire conflict, using a powerful contrast of trust. He told his people, hey, do not fear their arm of flesh, their sheer military numbers, because we have the Lord our God on our side. He boldly declared that their unseen spiritual support was infinitely greater than the physical army standing outside their walls.
And you know what? His trust was entirely validated. Through faithful prayer alongside the prophet Isaiah, the nation was miraculously delivered without the people having to lift a single sword. God sent an angel to decimate the Assyrian camp overnight, which forced the mighty king Sennacherib into a completely humiliating retreat, totally preserving Judah.
But we really need to notice the cycle here, because human nature is incredibly stubborn. After experiencing all this godly success and then a subsequent miraculous personal healing, Hezekiah actually felt the exact same temptation of pride as his great-grandfather Uzziah. He forgot to give thanks. But, and this is absolutely crucial, he broke the generational curse. How? By immediately recognizing his error, repenting and humbling himself, which ushered in lasting peace for his entire era.
As we wrap up this explainer on these 4 powerful historical archetypes, I want to leave you with a question about how you confront the overwhelming crises in your own world. When the Sennacheribs of life surround you, when disaster strikes, or on the flip side, when unearned success tempts your ego, where do you place your trust? Is it in your own arm of flesh or in something far greater? Keep that in mind as you chart your own path this week.